ask that we keep the lights on for this part right now. Lower them in a little while. But I will ask you to go within, close your eyes if that feels comfortable, take a few deep healing breaths. Let's reflect on the words that Paula just sang. Mary, did you know? Can you imagine being the individual chosen to birth into the world a consciousness like Jesus? So I ask you to deepen into your own reservoir of wisdom and awakened consciousness. And honor yourself right now for saying yes to this idea of birthing the higher consciousness into the world. Honor yourself for saying yes to waking up when our world can feel so confusing. Honor yourself for saying yes to doing the inner work. Today that question comes to us, each one of us. Did you know? Did you know that saying yes to birthing this awakened consciousness into the world, did you know that saying yes to this calling would bring you to the most extraordinary moments of joy and wonder, and also take you to the depths of sorrow and empathy and compassion, and that everything in between, the wonder, the curiosity, the confusion, that saying yes to this human life journey and waking up at the same time. Did you know? Did you know what would be required when you said yes to being a part of this time that we're living in, to keep saying yes to awakened consciousness? Mary, did you know? Let's just take a moment of silence to reflect on this idea that within us is the capacity to wake up. We've said yes to this. We keep saying yes to this. Another deep breath, and once again, just imagine honoring yourself, whispering on the inner, Namaste, I behold the Christ in you. I behold the light in you. I behold the awakened consciousness in you. Namaste to yourself. And as we open our eyes and take another deep breath, please turn to someone and simply say, Namaste, which means I behold the Christ in you. How many of you were here for candlelight Friday night? We had 50 people in a circle. It was so wonderful. We want to thank Reverend Dr. Cassandra Butler for leading us in that, and all the readers who came and everyone who attended. It was beautiful standing in that circle of light. Also wanted to acknowledge the Long Bay Threshold Singers. Once again, they opened our hearts. Patty was a part of that. Thank you, Patty. So as we were standing in the circle of light Friday night, I felt communion. I thought, well, Sunday's communion, but this too is a communion. So what was it a communion about? How do we experience communion in the world? Anybody? Communion. What were we communing in?
Through meditation.
Through meditation. When we come together like this, we are in a communion energy, a collective. We're sharing in energy. What is it that we are in communion with? What? Christ, love, peace, each other. What? Positive energy. We're in communion with one another. And we're also in communion with one another's sorrows and joys, right? That's the collective. That's community. When David and I, yeah, you don't like that part. When David and I were still on the West Coast and deciding to move back to the East Coast, and one of the things I was praying for was, having been a road warrior for many, many years in ministry, top of my list was get off the road, from traveling so much, and to be a part of a community, really solid part of a community, because we traveled so much that we had people everywhere, but not community right where we lived. And so I prayed to be in community. And how many of you know that's a mixed bag? Yeah. And how many of us know that community is the divine and holy relationship that opens our heart to the awakened consciousness? So we all need to be thanking one another nonstop in the easy moments and the not easy moments of being in relationship, relating together this idea of awakened consciousness. Can't awaken without it. We used to go to caves to awaken. They're all filled at this point. We have to do our lives of the mystic, as Jim Roseberry says, we are mystics of the street. We are doing our awakening work in community, not hidden away in isolation. So communion with what? Here's what Charles Fillmore, our co-founder, said about communion. It's sharing the deep aspirations of our heart with the indwelling presence. He said the indwelling Father. I changed that to presence. Charles told me that was okay. And hearing the still small voice. Communion, we can call it meditation, we can call it prayer, we can call it pondering. Mary took these things into her heart and she pondered them. We ponder, we pause, pray, and ponder. We listen to that inner river of wisdom and insight and awareness, knowing always we're waking up. And Linda, Saul, and I were having a little visit before service, and I said, have you noticed how many of us are doing a lot of deep work right now? And she said, well, if you're awake, you're doing the work. Right? So again, honor yourself for being awake enough to recognize that you're doing the work. So what is the work? When we're in communion with this awakened consciousness, we realize that every event and every circumstance is there for our benefit of waking up. Oh, Paula says it's true, so we're on good standing. Okay, so the consciousness of Christ, the way our brother Jesus allegedly said it, because I wasn't there, but this is what's recorded. When he brought them together for the Lord's Supper, and somebody, some churches do communion every Sunday, some only certain times of year. We've been doing it here on Palm Sunday and on Christmas Sunday. So why would we want to do it on Christmas Sunday? In my perspective, we want a ceremony that reminds us that when we say yes to our calling of waking up, and whatever expression that takes, when we say yes to waking up, we open to receiving, ingesting, digesting, assimilating, and expressing the all of it. When I was in my early religious years, I used to think, to do the things that Jesus did, the healing, the miracles, the song he sang about the walking on water, supporting people to walk again, be healed. Oh, yes. Oh, yeah, I'll do. do all the things that the Christ consciousness calls us to, requires us to also deepen into the energy of empathy with one another, even when we're going through our sorrowful times. And right now, there's so many generational patterns being undone and transformed. We're all doing the work together. So if it feels intense, just simply say to one another, literally or on the inner, namaste. I behold the Christ in you, even when you're acting goofy. I mean, we don't have to say that, but to know for one another, I behold the Christ in you, even when you're afraid, even when you're confused. I behold the Christ in myself, even when I've taken a misstep in my thinking and my expression. I behold the Christ in the world. This is the work that we're called to. Sometimes you're going to be called to remember for someone else their light when they are completely convinced that they are in darkness. It's no small job. So to continually say yes to the calling, that's communion with the presence within, it's the communion with the community, it's communion even with our parts that seem unlovely, the aspects of ourselves that seem unlovely. Is this making sense? We're in communion with these energies all the time. He said, eat and drink all of it. This is bread, this is grape juice. It's a ceremony, it's a symbol of receiving the deeper teachings, the deeper awareness. The bread, the knowledge, the wisdom, the insights, opening up within us wisdom that preceded this life embodiment and doesn't truly come from books. It comes from the deep inner river of life wisdom. It's there. And the spirit, the juice, this juice will not turn into wine. But it is juice that represents the spirit of life, that river of life. So it's a ceremony that we keep saying yes to the calling, yes to ingesting all of it, yes to breathing in and opening to the all of it, being in communion with the all of it. I have in my life been in communion with certain energies, but not wanting to be in communion with others. You've probably figured it out too. We cannot open our hearts to the deep love without opening our hearts to the all of it. Years ago in New York City, I said to one of my spiritual teachers, Hilda Charlton, she could see into the heavenly realms. I said, oh, Hilda, I want to be able to see into the heavenly realms. I mean, she had ongoing conversations with Jesus and Buddha and Mother Mary and Kuan Yin and all the great holy masters. I thought, oh, I'd love to see into the heavenly realms the way you do, Hilda. And she said, darling, one day you will. I said, oh. And she said, and one day you'll also be able to see into the depths of sorrows and heartbreaks of every person you pass on the street. And I said, oh. Well, okay, all right then. We're wanting to open up to the wonder and the brilliance. We're also opening up to the places of darkness within each one of us. It's the all of it. And that's part of what communion does. I'll eat and drink all of it. I'll take it all in so that I can be a part of the transformative consciousness that's at work on the planet right this second. What was I thinking? Well, that's the thing. This goes beyond thinking. The call of spirit goes beyond thinking, and it goes beyond all human understanding. It goes beyond all of our plans and all of the ways we think we have it all figured out. So here's the way Rumi said it. Instead of saying, eat and drink all of it, he said, I have come, meaning spirit, I have come to drag you out of yourself and take you in my heart. I have come to bring out the beauty you never knew you had and lift you like a prayer to the sky. Everybody say together, I am God's prayer. I am God's prayer. I just love Rumi. So take it all. Take it in, eat it, drink it, ingest it, be it. Become that. I am consciousness. I have come to drag you out of yourself. Do you ever feel like that? I mean, this last week, I felt like Spirit got a hold of me and dragged me out of some old patterns. Have you been having that, or did I get that all on my own this week? I have come to bring out the beauty you never knew you had and lift you like a prayer to the sky. Spirit's at work. Spirit's at work moving around in us. And sometimes we don't like it. Right? Spirit's moving around in us. And sometimes your beloveds will show up for you to help that to happen in various and sundry ways. And you show up for them doing the same thing. So what do we stand for? You know, we have it in our language. I'm not going to stand for that. I'm not going to stand for that. Everybody put your hand on your head. I am not going to stand for that. And then do the little that Garlotta, I'm not going to stand for that. Right? And Tracy Foxworth put on Facebook something the other day, and she said 3 finger snap. I am not going to stand for that. 3 finger snaps. But what will we stand for? What are we standing for is we're saying yes to the all of it. Eat all of it, drink all of it, say yes to all of it. What are we saying yes to? Transformation. What is coming into wholeness, knowing our beauty. Knowing that when it feels like Spirit is dragging across the floor, that there's a destination with a higher calling. There's something sacred going on. So Friday night, Lesta Sue read something that we actually read at last year's Candlelight as well. And it was written by a woman named Dorothy Auger. Is that how I say it, Lester? Auger. It's French. She wrote this after a tragedy. Many people were hurt in Paris. And she's from Belgium, but it's Brussels.
Brussels, I'm sorry, that's where it happened.
So what do we stand for? We know pretty much what we don't want to stand for, but we need to put some pondering time, some pausing, praying, and pondering time into, well, what is it we stand for? And especially when our lives have shaken us somehow, where events, where circumstances, people, groups, religions, government, stock market, whatever it is that takes us out of our centered, awakened consciousness. What is it we're going to stand for? So I'd like to read this again. And when we come forward in the communion time, if you would like to come to this microphone and say what you stand for, what you're standing for, I invite you to do that. You don't have to. It can be as simple as I stand for love when you come forward for the communion. So let's take a deep breath and listen to these words. The title is For Love. I stand for love, even with a broken soul, even with a heavy heart. I shall stand for love. For the world is wounded, not just my little piece of land where I am mostly safe, where I am mostly well, but our world everywhere, every day. I shall stand for love. Because we need more light, not more deaths, not more power, not more bombs. I shall stand for love, so that our children are safe, so that our friends are sheltered, so that our borders are open, so that our hearts are open. I shall stand for love, even with a broken soul and even with a heavy heart. I stand for love. So in a moment we're going to come forward and we're going to do our communion service. And I know some of you come out of a church community where you're not allowed to receive communion if you're not a member of the church or practicing a certain faith. Please know that everyone is welcome here to do communion. So again, when we come forward, we take the bread, we dip it into the juice. It's your own private moment, it's your own private ceremony to take and eat all of it, to drink all of it as a symbol. Again, a symbol of your calling to be an awakened consciousness in this world, a presence and atmosphere of peace and transformation, even when your own heart may be breaking. And to allow that awakened consciousness to not only be born, but to keep growing. You know, when we talk about Salem Road, it's like we birthed the baby, now we get to raise it up. Well, it's the same with awakened consciousness. It's been birthed in every one of us here. Now it's a matter of saying a full yes to the calling of what it means. So in a moment, Bobby and David are going to play softly in the background. We're going to lower the lights just a wee bit. We'll start from the back row and move on this section first, and then this section and this section. As you come forward, please dip the bread in the juice. Do your own private ceremony of saying yes to your full calling. And if you feel that you would like to say what you're standing for, this is the mic that's not on. So if we can have that on, please. It was David's mic. 2. Is that it? Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing. Do we have it now?
Yep.
Yeah.
Testing 1, 2, 3. So it can be as simple as I stand for love. I stand for peace. Okay. I just broke the world. Never do this to a mic. It doesn't sound on to me, but I'm going to trust y'all that it is.
It's on, but it's not as loud.
It's not as loud as this one, so I may hold this mic for you. Okay, so let's take a deep breath. Communion with the presence of peace, communion with the presence of love, communion with the awakened consciousness within you, known by so many names. It's come to be known in unity as Christ consciousness, divine consciousness. And we give thanks to our brother Jesus for being one of the ones who brought this into the world so that we could have an example, a demonstration of what's possible for us. So back row, if you'll come forward. You can just go ahead and form the line as it comes through. And then go to the mic and say what you stand for if you so choose.
I stand for oneness without exception.